No matter how long you've been a fan of Penn State football, you have never seen a Penn State-Iowa game with the stakes as high as they are this weekend. We'll get into all of that, share some keys to the game, and an official prediction in this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. I am Kevin McGuire. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State-Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Friday edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. That's right, it is Football Friday here on the podcast as we get you set for a massive Big Ten showdown between undefeated number 4 Penn State against undefeated number 3 Iowa. We've had a lot of fun discussing that particular matchup all week long on the podcast, including our crossover episode yesterday with Locked On Hawkeyes. But today I'm going to give you my final thoughts, my final keys to the game, and my official prediction for what's going to go down this weekend as Penn State takes on Iowa. My name is Kevin McGuire. I'm the host here of Locked On Nittany Lions, and of course, I'm the editor of NittanyLionsWire.com on the USA Today Sports Media Group. I'm also a contributor to AthlonSports.com, so there's a chance you may have already gotten an idea of which way I'm leaning on this game, but if not, stay tuned because I'm going to go officially on the record for this upcoming game between Penn State and Iowa after we get into a couple final thoughts leading you into the weekend. We want to make sure you never miss a single episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, so if you're checking us out on the Odyssey app or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, however you get your audio podcast, make sure you're following this podcast, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, and of course, if you want to help us out a little bit more, the best way to do that is to leave a rating and a review wherever that is possible. That really helps with our placement across those various podcasting apps. There's something with the algorithm that seems to work when people follow, rate, and review. So we appreciate all of the support, all of the feedback you guys have been giving us over the years, and especially this season. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, hello, welcome, make yourself comfortable. It's going to be a fun season the rest of the way. You may be watching us on YouTube right now, and if you are, I want to thank you guys for tuning in and leaving a thumbs up on the video and leaving a comment down below with your official score prediction for this weekend's game. And of course, if you ever want to share some questions or comments that you want to have us mix into the conversation, best way to do that is with a YouTube comment or follow us on Twitter. You can also reach out to us at any time on our Twitter account at Locked On Nittany, especially during game days. We have a lot of fun on Twitter during Penn State games, so you make sure you follow us on Twitter while you're watching the game from home. Log into your phone, Twitter app, and communicate with us back and forth. We have a lot of fun on Twitter on game days. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/LockedOnNittany, and we've got the Instagram account as well at instagram.com/LockedOnNittany. So a lot of stuff to get into in today's episode. We're going to kind of blitz through a lot of the same topics of conversation we've been talking about all week long, but I want to kind of refine a couple final thoughts for you guys. And the first thing that I have to point out about this game is this is probably the best Penn State-Iowa game we have ever seen. As long as you've been a Penn State fan, as long as your parents or your grandparents may have been a fan of Penn State football, granted, Penn State and Iowa don't usually play every year. They didn't play very frequently until Penn State joined the Big Ten. But you have never seen a matchup quite like this with two top 4 teams. And I know we're still relatively early in October, but still, the magnitude of this game, I don't think has ever been matched in a Penn State-Iowa game before. We have seen Penn State have really good seasons going up against an Iowa team that was maybe mediocre and vice versa. But this time, they're both really good, at least as far as the defenses are concerned. I think my biggest question is, are these really the number 3 and number 4 teams in the country? And I think that is a fair question to point out because as we discussed on the Locked On crossover episode yesterday with Andrew Wade from Locked On Hawkeyes, it feels as though Penn State and Iowa definitely have their strengths, but they also have some of their weaknesses as well. And I think the weaknesses are fair to point out going into this matchup as you're breaking things down, position by position, offense versus defense. Certainly, I feel as though running the football is clearly Penn State's biggest weakness, and you kind of wonder, well, are they going to be able to take any steps forward after seemingly getting something together against Indiana? Doing so and taking that next step or continuing what was going on against Indiana, it's going to be very difficult this weekend against an Iowa team that is always going to play well defensively. And Iowa's defense has been playing really well. We'll get into the passing matchup coming up in the next segment. But, really just kind of going into this game, are there any nervous butterflies that either team is going to have, knowing the attention that this game in particular is going to be getting? And I don't think that will necessarily be the case. But I think my biggest concern here for Penn State specifically is they're going back on the road again. They haven't been on the road since the season opener against Wisconsin. And I know it was a season opener. I know it's the first game with a new offensive coordinator. And I know that Wisconsin defense is very good. But it kind of gives you an idea of what things may be like in road games against good defensive teams. Iowa is a really good defensive team. They play really well at home in Kinnick Stadium. And I think it's fair to wonder just how much production you're going to get out of this Penn State offense when you go up against this Iowa defense. On the road in Kinnick Stadium, it's going to be a raucous environment. It's going to be hopping, it's going to be loud, and it's going to be a challenge for Penn State just to get things rolling. And I don't think that this is a game where Penn State's offense is clicking on all cylinders right off the jump. I don't think it's possible to do that against Iowa. But if there's one area in particular that could lead Penn State to a victory, it is probably that quarterback position. But before I get into that, of course, I want to talk to you guys real quickly about Built Bars. If you're looking for a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, then Built Bar is what you are looking for. Built Bar is by far and away the best tasting protein bar on the planet. You can do your comparisons with the nutritional facts against other nationally leading protein bars, and you will see how advanced Built Bar is compared to some of the other options. And they have flavors for everybody, and they always have a limited edition and seasonal flavors as well. So if you're not following them on Twitter at bar_built, then you're probably going to miss out the moment that a new short time limited edition flavor comes about. And this is going to be a busy couple of months because I know Built Bar, been following them for a while now. I know that they're going to have some fun fall, autumn flavors available for you. And of course, the holiday season is going to creep up on you pretty quickly. So you know that they're going to have you fulfilled there as well. But don't take my word for it. Go to BuiltBar.com, check out all the flavors that they have available, and then when you're ready to place your first order, because you are going to be wanting to place an order for some of these Built Bars, you want to make sure you use the promo code LOCKED15 and save yourself 15% off your next order from BuiltBar.com. And of course, one more reminder, Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars on the planet. You want to take advantage of that promo code LOCKED15, save yourself 15% off at BuiltBar.com. I want to thank you guys for being a part of the Locked On Nittany Lions podcast, whether you've been following us on your preferred podcasting app and making us your first listen of the day, following us on Twitter at Locked On Nittany, or liking our Facebook page at facebook.com. Of course, we're also now on YouTube, and we want to thank you guys for checking out our YouTube channel. We've been doing this for a few weeks now, and we are trying to experiment a little bit here and there and try to continue to grow the channel a little bit. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hopefully you'll do that today or very soon. Hey, if you're watching this video right now, why not just hit that subscribe button right now, leave that thumbs up, and leave a comment down below. We do have a YouTube comment of the day. This one comes from Julian, who says, Penn State, I feel, has the slightly better eye test, but home field is a big thing in college. I'm not convinced Iowa's wins are at the level of Penn State's either. Penn State by 6. Okay, so a couple things here. Yeah, the eye test for Penn State, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty on par with what we've seen out of Iowa. I think the offensive portion of the eye test certainly favors Penn State, though. I think Iowa's offense has been opportunistic, given some really good field position, but I have to say, I trust Penn State's offense a little bit more to make some big plays when they need it the most, even against this Iowa secondary. And this Iowa secondary is legit. As good as Penn State's secondary is, Iowa's is just as good. They've been creating way more turnovers, and that has to worry you a little bit coming into this weekend's matchup. So Iowa's secondary, they passed the eye test. But the quarterback situation, I think, definitely favors Penn State. I think Sean Clifford has been playing so much better this season. Spencer Petras certainly had a good game against Maryland, but if you're asking me which quarterback I trust a little bit more to make some of the big plays down the stretch with the game on the line, I'm going to go with Sean Clifford. And I say that because I think that he's going to have some troubles against this Iowa secondary. I really do feel like we could be talking about a 2-interception game from Sean Clifford, but even with that, I trust that this Penn State defense is not going to let those turnovers lead to a massively swing in momentum for the Iowa Hawkeyes. As much as that can be the case here, I trust this Penn State defense to make up for it. Maybe they don't shut out Iowa on those possible turnover opportunities, but limiting the damage, I think, is all you can ask from this Penn State defense. And I don't know if I trust Iowa's offense to really capitalize on some of those moments the way that you would hope to if you're an Iowa fan. So I feel as though eye test wise, Penn State has the advantage with the quarterback position. I think Iowa's got the advantage running the football. Defensive line might go Iowa, but again, the whole defense as a whole, I think they're pretty even between Penn State and Iowa. Penn State by 6, I'm not going there. I will share my official prediction later on in this podcast, but I don't think either of these teams wins this game by more than a field goal. I really do feel like it's going to be that close. It's going to go right down to the wire. So the keys to the game are pretty simple as far as I'm concerned. If you're Penn State, protect that darn football, right? Sean Clifford's been doing a really good job of that. I know he's had 3 interceptions this season. Only the one last week against Indiana. I think you can file under the category of, well, maybe he would like to have that one back. I think he just missed a read on a defensive player, making a good jump on the ball. It happens, even to the best of the quarterbacks that are out there. So I'm still not crushing Sean Clifford by any stretch of the imagination. I think he has been just fine. And I think you can also trust him to take off and run with the football a little bit as well. There have been so many times this year where maybe the design runs for Sean Clifford aren't necessarily as effective, but if he's dropping back and he's looking around the field, doesn't see anything open but sees some open field, he's going to take advantage of that. And I think you have to do that in a game like this because Iowa may not give you much, but when they do, you got to take advantage of that as much as you possibly can. So that's another reason why I trust Sean Clifford a little bit more. If he's not making the throws with his arm, I think that he can make the plays with his feet. So that gives Penn State an advantage. And that's really important because I don't think Penn State's going to run the football very well. I really don't. If they do, then all of a sudden my outlook for this game gets much more optimistic for Penn State's chances here. I think Iowa is the team that's going to run the ball more effectively. And I say that because watching what Penn State's defense did against Wisconsin and what they did against Auburn tells me that a team with a good running foundation can chunk out some yards, can grind out some yards, and really kind of wear down an opposing defense a little bit throughout the course of the game. Iowa is built to do that with Tyler Goodson. So this is a situation where if you're Iowa, you look at what Penn State did against Auburn and you're scratching your head wondering why Auburn didn't run the football more. If they did, we might be talking about a different outcome for that game. But the question is, how much can Penn State take away from that Iowa running game? Because if Penn State does take away that running game, all of a sudden you're forcing Spencer Petras to beat you. And again, I favor that quarterback matchup so much more for Penn State than I would if I'm Iowa. So that definitely plays into Penn State's favor. If this comes down to which quarterback's going to perform better, Penn State's got the advantage there because Sean Clifford is the better quarterback and has been the more reliable quarterback, I feel like, so far this season. You take away that Iowa running game, that seems to be the case every time you play Iowa, but if you can take away their running game, all of a sudden you can build things in your favor there. And then, of course, the defensive line has to create some push there and create some pressure because if this is going to be a game where you force Spencer Petras to beat you, you need to force him to make some mistakes. You need to get him under pressure, get him on the move, make him feel very uncomfortable. And at times, Penn State's defensive line has done that, but I would like to see it a little bit more. This is a good Iowa offensive line. Iowa usually has good offensive lines, so it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. But I do feel like if you can get a defensive line to create some havoc and make Spencer Petras a little nervous back there, that's going to lead to some opportunities for the secondary to really step up and continue making their own plays. Jaquan Brisker, Jair Brown, they've been coming up with some really big interceptions all season long. I expect that one of those guys is going to make at least one big defensive play in this game. I'll share with you my official prediction for this weekend's game coming up in just a little bit. But of course, head on over to betonline.ag right now and check out all the odds and all the props for yourself right now for Penn State-Iowa this weekend. You can get the over-under at 41 points right now. That tells me that this is going to be a low-scoring game, and it could very well be a race to 20 points. I happen to love the under in this game. I'm not tipping my hand too much here, but I just feel as though the defenses are not going to allow a lot of points. I think the under is definitely the play here. If you're interested in the point spread, it has been swinging Penn State's favor this week. I'm looking at the latest lines as of Thursday evening, and you can get Iowa at minus 1.5 points right now. That line has gone down. It is swinging in Penn State's favor, and a 1.5 point underdog on the road against as good of a defense as Iowa has tells me that the odds makers kind of like Penn State here, because even though Penn State is the underdog, that feels like a Penn State line the way things have been shaping up throughout the week. But check out all the lines for this Penn State-Iowa game, as well as everything else going on around the world of college football. The NFL, baseball postseason is in action right now. You can get all the odds and props right from betonline.ag. It's totally free to sign up for an account today. All you need is an email address. When you make your first deposit on BetOnline, make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON. And the folks over at BetOnline, they're going to throw in a 50% welcome bonus on top of your initial deposit. So if you would deposit $100 in your account and use the promo code LOCKEDON, BetOnline's going to give you $50 extra dollars in credits to make sure you've got plenty of revenue for your betting action this weekend. Head on over to betonline.ag right now, sign up for the account, use the promo code LOCKEDON, get a 50% welcome bonus. So place your bets on Penn State-Iowa this weekend with BetOnline, where the game starts. We're bringing a close to another edition of Football Friday right here on the Locked On Nittany Lions podcast. Thank you once again for making us your first listen of the day on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for making it this far. That really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. But of course, leave a thumbs up and leave a comment down below with your official score prediction for this weekend's game. I know some of you have been sharing your predictions for this Penn State-Iowa game in previous YouTube comments. I thank you guys for going on record, because I'm going to have some fun looking back at all the predictions that you guys have had. And of course, you can also reach out to us on our Twitter account with your official predictions for the game at Locked On Nittany if you want to follow us on Twitter. But it is time for me to share my official prediction and why I'm going with this official prediction. Now, I've said this official prediction has officially been released already in one form or another. So if you are hearing this for the first time, seeing this for the first time, just know that I've already kind of leaked it out there through other conversations. But I'm not going to stray away from this. I'm going to put my name up against this prediction, and I will own it if necessary. I think Penn State loses this weekend. Simply put, I'm just going to put it out there. I think Penn State loses this game, and I wish I had a really good definitive reason why. Chalk this one up as just a gut reaction. I don't have a great feeling about this game. I feel as though things have been going so well for Penn State that maybe this is a week where things kind of catch up to them a little bit, and the football fates kind of even the playing field just a little bit. I just feel like Iowa has everything you need to bring Penn State down a couple notches and kind of give them a slight bit of dose of reality. This is going to be a good competitive game. Don't get me wrong. I think this game goes right down to the wire. I think it's a 4-quarter game from start to finish. I don't think a lot of points are scored. And as much as I think that Penn State has enough advantages compared to what Iowa brings to the table, there is something about a primetime atmosphere in Kinnick Stadium. I know it's not a primetime game, but as I've said, by the time the second half rolls around, it's basically prime time, right? It's early prime time, but I just feel like the prime time juices are going to be flowing in Kinnick Stadium, and I think that at some point that Iowa secondary makes a play that they really need to make, and I think it could stand in the way of Penn State keeping their undefeated record ongoing going into their bye week. I think going into the bye week would be pretty rough with a loss at Iowa, but at the same time, this is a really good Penn State team. I'm saying they're not great. Iowa's not great. I think these are both really good teams. Great defenses, really good teams. Something's going to have to give. And unfortunately, the gut reaction in me says that this is probably a game they lose. Now, I will say this. Before the season started, when I'm going through wins and losses for the season, I did predict that Penn State would probably go 9-3. I think that might have been my official prediction, but I always had the logic of Penn State's going to lose to Ohio State. I'm still not ready to back away from that one just yet. And then they're going to split the games between Wisconsin and Iowa. And I just singled those two out because they were both road trips against similarly defensive squads. And I just felt as though Penn State could win one, would probably lose the other. Penn State won the season opener at Wisconsin. I'm not backing away from my preseason prediction. I do think that they got the win against Wisconsin, so I think that they will get the loss at Iowa. Hope I'm wrong, though. I think that Penn State comes up just on the wrong end of a 20-17 victory for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So there you go. There's my official prediction. Iowa 20, Penn State 17, but it goes deep into the fourth quarter. I just feel as though I think the luck's going to favor the home team just enough for Iowa to get away with a win. But lots to play for even if Penn State does lose. But win or lose, we will be recapping everything with you on Monday. We're going to try and put together a post-game podcast in some capacity on Saturday night. We'll have to just see how this all plays out this weekend. But this is going to be a big game. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that you're going to enjoy the game. I hope that Penn State is giving us a win to talk about when we get back together next week. But we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless of the fact, next week is the bye week. Next week it will be the midpoint of Penn State season, and we'll have lots to discuss over the course of the first half of the season. Looking forward to the second half of the season. And, of course, maybe we'll be talking about a top 3 Penn State team when we get a little bit closer to the start of the college football playoff push. But win or lose, we are going to have some fun talking about this Penn State team because it has been a fun team to cover, and it will continue to do so no matter what happens this weekend. I'm predicting a loss. I hate to do it, but I got to be honest with you guys. I have a weird feeling about this weekend's game. We'll see if I'm wrong. We'll see if I'm spot on. But let me know what you think about the game. Reach out to us on our Twitter account at Locked On Nittany. If you're watching on YouTube, leave those comments down below so we can see what you guys have to say about the game. And of course, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/LockedOnNittany. Make sure you're following the podcast on your preferred podcasting app, whether it's the Odyssey app, which I highly recommend, or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google Podcasts, however you're listening to my voice. Make sure you're giving us a follow as well. And leave those ratings and reviews, as that is the best way to show your support for our growing podcast. We're having a lot of fun this season. We're getting some good growth for the podcast. More people seem to be tuning in. Hopefully, if you're a new listener, you're going to be coming back next week, regardless of what happens this weekend. And I look forward to communicating with you further. Again, of course, we're also on YouTube, so make sure you like our YouTube channel, give those thumbs up on the videos, and leave those comments. That really helps out with the YouTube algorithm as we continue to grow that platform as well. My name is Kevin McGuire. You can give me a follow on Twitter at KevinOnCFB. Check out all of our Penn State coverage over on NittanyLionsWire.com, a part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. I'm also a contributor to AthlonSports.com. Look for my weekly picks going into this weekend against the spread. We'll see if we have a pretty good week. But thank you once again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen. If you want to make your second listen something that's going to give you more of a Big Ten feel, you got to head up on over to Locked On Big Ten, where Nate Dickinson is scanning the world of Big Ten football, talking lots of Penn State-Iowa this week as well. So make sure you get your Big Ten podcasting fix with Nate Dickinson over at Locked On Big Ten. Until next time, everybody, have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Let's see if we've got a win to talk about coming up next week. But regardless, thank you once again for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later.